For decades, Goldie Hawn has been the golden girl of Hollywood. With her infectious laugh, sparkling blue eyes, and bubbly personality, she lit up the screen in comedies, romances, and dramas alike. Audiences adored her, critics respected her, and she became a household name. But behind the laughter, fame, and glamour, Goldie Hawn has endured more tragedy than most people realize. Now, as she reaches 80, the truth about her struggles and heartbreaks is finally coming to light. And it will leave you stunned. Goldie Hawn's life began far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Born in Washington, D.C., in 1945, she was raised in a modest household where hard work and discipline were emphasized. From an early age, Goldie had a deep love for dance. Ballet became her first passion, and by the time she was a teenager, she was already teaching dance classes to younger students. For many, that would have been enough, a safe, steady path in the arts. But Goldie's personality was far too vibrant, too full of energy and light to stay hidden in a studio classroom. Her big break came in the mid-1960s when she was cast on the television show Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. It was here that audiences first fell in love with her infectious giggle, quirky mannerisms, and bubbly charm. On screen, she was the embodiment of joy, painting her face with silly expressions and playing the role of the ditzy blonde to perfection. The public adored her. But behind the laughter, Goldie was beginning to feel the pressure of Hollywood's pigeonholing. She was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply creative. But the industry only wanted her in one box, the lovable, silly girl who made people laugh. Her breakout onto the big screen came in 1969 when she starred in Cactus Flower alongside Walter, Matthau, and Ingrid Bergman. The role won her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, catapulting her into A-list stardom. Overnight, she was no longer just the funny girl on TV. She was an Oscar-winning actress with the power to command major roles. For most, this would have been the dream realized. But for Goldie, it was just the beginning of new challenges. Hollywood has always been harsh to women, but for Goldie, the challenges cut especially deep. The very persona that made her famous, the giggly blonde, was now a trap. Casting directors struggled to see beyond that image, and serious roles often passed her by. Goldie, however, was determined to prove that she was more than a stereotype. She began carefully choosing her projects, mixing comedies with more dramatic roles in films like The Sugarland Express and Private Benjamin, the latter of which she also produced. But the pressure of success weighed heavily. Goldie was still in her 20s when she became a global star, and fame came with invasive scrutiny. Paparazzi hounded her every move, magazines dissected her appearance, and every relationship she entered became tabloid fodder. For someone who longed for both artistic freedom and a normal life, it was overwhelming. Goldie's early years in Hollywood were filled with contradictions. On one hand, she was celebrated as America's sweetheart, a symbol of happiness and optimism during a turbulent era. On the other, she was quietly struggling with the burden of being misunderstood, typecast, and stripped of her privacy. Success had come quickly, but it came at a cost, forcing her to navigate an industry that often valued her looks and charm over her depth and intelligence. Looking back, it's easy to see why audiences adored her so much. She radiated warmth, she made people laugh, and she carried herself with an authenticity that few stars possessed. But even at the height of her early fame, the seeds of heartbreak were being planted. The tension between her public image and her private reality would go on to shape much of her life in the decades that followed. Goldie Hawn's on-screen roles often portrayed her as the light-hearted, carefree woman who could make anyone smile. But off-screen, her journey through love and relationships was anything but simple. In fact, much of her heartbreak stems from the turbulence of her personal life, marked by failed marriages, complicated romances, and the heavy price of living in the public eye. Her first marriage was to dancer Gus Triconis in 1969. At the time, Goldie was riding high on her newfound fame, but her personal life was already fraying under the pressures of Hollywood. She and Traconis were young and full of dreams, but the intensity of her career kept them apart more often than together. By 1973, the marriage had quietly unraveled, leaving Goldie disillusioned about love at an age when most were still figuring out their lives. After her split from Traconis, Goldie married musician Bill Hudson in 1976. Together they had 2 children, Oliver and Kate Hudson, both of whom would later become Hollywood stars in their own right. On the surface, it seemed like Goldie had found stability, a family, a career, and a partner. But behind the facade, the relationship was strained. Bill Hudson later accused Goldie of infidelity and claimed she painted him as an absent father. Their bitter divorce in 1982 not only fractured the marriage, but also left lasting scars on the children. Oliver and Kate grew up with a deep sense of abandonment from their father, often crediting Kurt Russell, Goldie's later partner, as the true father figure in their lives. This period of Goldie's life was particularly heartbreaking. As a mother, she wanted to shield her children from pain, but the divorce played out under the spotlight of Hollywood tabloids. Every detail was dissected, every rumor magnified. Kate Hudson would later speak publicly about the difficulties of growing up with a fractured family and the emotional toll it took on her and Oliver. For Goldie, the guilt of those years never fully disappeared. And then came Kurt Russell. In 1983, Goldie began her now legendary relationship with him, and the two became one of Hollywood's longest-lasting couples. What makes their love story remarkable is that they never married, a choice that baffled fans but symbolized their unique bond. They didn't need a wedding ring to prove their devotion. Their partnership spoke for itself. Yet even this beautiful relationship was not without its struggles. Being in the spotlight meant constant rumors of breakups, affairs, and tensions. Goldie often admitted that keeping their love strong required work, honesty, and resilience. Despite the enduring success of her relationship with Kurt, the ghosts of Goldie's earlier heartbreaks never completely vanished. Failed marriages, the pain of divorce, and the wounds left on her children weighed heavily on her conscience. She spoke candidly in interviews about how difficult it was to balance being a mother with being a superstar, and how much she wished she could have protected Oliver and Kate from the chaos of her personal life. What makes Goldie's story tragic is that she was searching for the same thing many of us want: love, stability, and family. But the demands of fame made it nearly impossible to achieve without heartbreak. Her resilience, however, became part of her legacy. Despite the storms, she continued to smile, laugh, and bring joy to millions, even when her own heart was heavy. To the outside world, Goldie Hawn was the eternal ray of sunshine, the actress with the sparkling laugh who seemed immune to sadness. But behind the curtain of fame, Goldie was quietly fighting battles that very few fans knew about. The relentless demands of Hollywood, the personal sacrifices she made for her career, and her struggles with mental health all formed part of the hidden cost of being one of the most beloved stars of her generation. Goldie has often spoken candidly about her struggles with depression. At the height of her fame in the 1970s, she was one of the most recognized faces in the world, yet she often felt isolated and overwhelmed. In interviews, she admitted that the pressure to maintain her image as the bubbly blonde weighed heavily on her. Hollywood didn't want to see her sad or serious. It wanted her to laugh, to giggle, to be the lighthearted woman who brought joy to millions. For Goldie, that meant hiding her pain behind a mask of humor. She once recalled how, at the age of just 27, she would sometimes sit in her dressing room crying, wondering if she could handle the expectations placed upon her. Fame had given her wealth, recognition, and opportunity, but it also robbed her of privacy and peace of mind. Paparazzi followed her everywhere, capturing even her most vulnerable moments. Every mistake was amplified, every rumor printed as fact. The scrutiny was unrelenting, and it chipped away at her spirit. Goldie also struggled with the gender dynamics of Hollywood. As a woman in a male-dominated industry, she often felt she had to fight twice as hard for respect. While male actors were praised for their range and complexity, she was often reduced to her looks or her laugh. Even after her Oscar win, she found herself battling to prove that she was more than just the ditzy blonde. Producing Private Benjamin in 1980 was a turning point for her. It showed that she had the vision and drive to create serious, meaningful work. Yet even that achievement came with exhaustion and stress as she juggled the demands of acting, producing, and motherhood. What many fans don't realize is that Goldie came close to walking away from Hollywood altogether. The emotional toll of the industry, combined with the heartbreak in her personal life, led her to retreat from the spotlight for stretches of time. During these breaks, she turned to spirituality, meditation, and philanthropy as a way to heal. She founded the Hawn Foundation, dedicated to teaching mindfulness and emotional well-being to children. In many ways, her work outside of Hollywood was a response to her own struggles, a way to give others the tools she wished she had during her darkest times. Despite her efforts to find balance, the shadows never fully disappeared. Depression, insecurity, and the constant fear of being replaced haunted her career. Hollywood's obsession with youth meant that as she aged, roles became scarcer, adding another layer of heartache. For a woman who had once been the embodiment of vitality and beauty, navigating the industry's ageism was both painful and humiliating. Goldie's story reminds us that fame is not always a blessing. For every smile she gave to the world, there were tears shed in private. Her laughter lit up the screen, but her heart carried the weight of immense pressure and pain. That duality, the joy she spread versus the struggles she endured, makes her life all the more tragic. She gave everything to her craft, but it came at a price that most of us will never fully understand. At 80, Goldie Hawn remains one of the most cherished figures in Hollywood, but her life today reflects a blend of triumph and tragedy. While she has built a lasting legacy of joy, humor, and resilience, the scars of her past and the weight of time are impossible to ignore. She is a woman who has given the world so much happiness, even while carrying her own private burdens. Goldie's relationship with longtime partner Kurt Russell has been one of the brightest constants in her life. For 4 decades, the two have shared a love story that defied the odds of Hollywood romance. They never felt the need to marry, insisting that their bond was deeper than a piece of paper. Together, they built a blended family, raising their children, Kate Hudson, Oliver Hudson, and Wyatt Russell, with love and stability. To this day, Goldie often credits her family as her greatest achievement, far surpassing anything she accomplished on screen. But even this happiness comes with bittersweet edges. As she has aged, Goldie has faced the reality of watching her children grow into their own fame, particularly Kate Hudson, who inherited not only her mother's talent, but also her resilience. While Goldie beams with pride, she has confessed to moments of sadness, knowing that the passage of time means she won't always be there to guide and protect them. Aging, after all, brings its own set of fears: declining health, the loss of friends, and the creeping sense of mortality. Publicly, Goldie has embraced her role as a grandmother with warmth and joy. Her social media posts often show her surrounded by grandchildren, laughing and playing in the sunshine. Yet behind the smiles, there are signs of vulnerability. Friends close to her have admitted that Goldie sometimes struggles with the loneliness that comes with growing older. Hollywood has a cruel habit of sidelining its icons, and for someone who was once the center of attention, fading from the spotlight has been a painful adjustment. Her legacy as a pioneer for women in Hollywood remains undeniable. Goldie wasn't just an actress. She was a trailblazer. She produced films at a time when few women dared to take control behind the scenes. She challenged stereotypes, fought for her creative vision, and paved the way for actresses today who demand to be seen as more than just pretty faces. Yet, for all her victories, she has admitted to moments of regret. There were roles she turned down, opportunities she missed, and relationships she couldn't mend. These what-ifs linger in her reflections, adding to the poignancy of her story. In interviews, Goldie often speaks about the importance of mindfulness and living in the present moment. She has devoted much of her later life to philanthropy, particularly her work through the Hawn Foundation's Mind Up program, which teaches emotional well-being to children worldwide. This mission reflects her desire to leave the world better than she found it, to help others avoid the pain she once felt. It's a noble endeavor, but it also hints at her need for healing, as though by helping children find happiness, she is soothing her younger self. Still, the tragedy of Goldie Hawn's story lies in the contrast between her public image and her private struggles. To millions, she will forever be the golden-haired comedian who lit up the screen with her infectious laughter. But to those who know her best, she is also a woman who endured heartbreak, depression, and the cruel realities of fame. At 80, she is a survivor, but survival has come at a price. Goldie's life is a reminder that even the brightest stars carry shadows. She gave the world laughter, but in exchange, she bore the pain of heartbreak, loneliness, and the unrelenting demands of celebrity. Her legacy is one of both triumph and tragedy, a story that proves even the most radiant smiles can hide the deepest sorrows.